Having recently become aware of my own relief and probably awareness on what stage I'm at with my own mental health journey now has made me want to do a video to just sort of speak about what it can be like, or what it can be like while you're going through a midst of a storm, and just also to just sort of speak about, how can I say, probably just to speak quite openly about what it can look like when you're going through a mental health crisis or a breakdown. I really wanted to do this because when I was at my worst, I knew that I was suffering, but I didn't know just how chaotic it was. And there are still times now where I look back in surprise, and there are probably people that I know that may have known that there was things going on in my life, but didn't work out why, or probably may not be able to recognize what I was like at my worst compared to what I'm like now. So the thing that I noticed, without going too much into what actually happened, was I noticed that I became very erratic. Now, for me, at that time, I was studying, I was very self-conscious due to a lot of stuff going on at that time. And also, I'm dyslexic, so I have quite high energy in general. So even though I knew I wasn't feeling good and I knew that I was in a destructive time, I also felt like there was times where I just saw it as part of my character, or I couldn't recognize the severity because of the traits I do have in general. In the times where I was erratic, I found it very easy to walk the line between life and death. And the best way how I could explain it, which of course, trigger warning if you have or are currently dealing with themes such as suicide or self-harm, what I would find for myself is the day-to-day things that you do. It can be very easy to become blissfully aware of how many interactions we have with danger. When you cross the road, when you're getting onto the train, interactions with people, so on. And what I found was, in those day-to-day interactions, I'd stopped trying to prevent myself from danger. I didn't mind if I took too much medication. I didn't mind if I walked out into a road and I was to get run over. I didn't mind if I was at a train station and instead of stopping when I was walking, just step past that line, And I didn't mind if I was going out and was sharing a drink with someone who had spiked or laced my drink. And I just got to that point where mentally I just knew that I couldn't afford to feel anymore. And to contextualize that, some people are aware, some people aren't, but there is only so much pain and trauma the body can go through, and that also connects back to mental health as well. There is only so much mental or physical trauma you can go through, which is why there is situations where people have been in very dire situations, have such an effect on the way how they are and how sometimes people who have gone through traumatic events their life and their health can sort of take a downward spiral. It's because it is an actual thing, scientifically and medically. But I just found that I couldn't acknowledge feeling within myself because it just felt like my body was shut down, and I was just waiting for that perfect moment where my life could end. And it's quite a crazy, I would say. I know that is contextually quite offensive to use, but crazy in the sense of extreme, and also just how manic I was during that time. It was very intense because in my today's context and right now, of course, I feel very grounded, and that is reflected in the way how I speak and the stillness I have and the focus that I have. But back then, the anxiety that I had at that moment, time just sped up, it was much faster than it was. And what felt like a month felt like 2 years. What felt like 20 minutes felt like 2 days. So within my general conversations with people, I would be very erratic and sometimes place quite unhealthy expectations. And that was because the way how time went upon my mind, it was much more rapid. As you're probably also able to pick up, is I was very disassociated from the life that I was living. I could only really care about the things that I could do that could buy time with my mental health, that could numb feelings. So for me, that was the party girl lifestyle. And I'm aware I'm quite adventurous and wild as it is, but it especially became important to me to have that on as a mask so I could numb those feelings, and where alcohol intoxication is like such a normalized thing to sort of get away with and drink excessive amounts of, that was the thing that I could use. People wouldn't know, people wouldn't question me about it. And that was the thing. I found that I just stopped fighting for myself. I cared about others, I wanted everyone else to be okay. But for myself, I no longer had that mental capacity to have that fight in me. I just didn't see what would be the point or the worth in that situation. And another thing that I also felt was I was very much overly sensitive to events that was going on around me. It is ridiculous how much triggers and traumas you can come across in your day-to-day life, whether it's through the tone of voice, whether it's to the weather, whether it's to the date, so many things. And at that time, I wasn't aware of it. So what I would find is there would frequently be reasons where I would have to numb out, or I would be triggered as a result of, but I didn't know that these were triggering themes for me at a time until probably introspectively looking back later after receiving like mental health support. And it is quite an unusual feeling. I think another thing that I felt is I was very isolated in my experience and pain, which, yes, to a degree, yes, I was. However, I did still have like a warm group of friends and family around me at those points, but I felt isolated because I knew no one else could feel my pain. No one else knew what that was. and no one else knew the reality of it. I think back then I clung on to security of consistency, as I knew any further changes, like, to my life negatively could really, it probably would be the straw that broke the camel's back with my own life, you know. So it is interesting because what I've found through healing all of that, and for anyone that does still like to go out and party and stuff like that, you know, it doesn't mean that you just have to become teetotal, or you can't find aspects of yourself that you had always been inquisitive about. But what you do find is your approach towards everything really does change, and that is because you assess, you know, am I doing this for the right reason? What is the result expectation that I'm getting out of it? You know, so there is times where I go teetotal, and there is times where I probably drink for everyone in our family. And it is nice to be able to have those lighter moments, and I do want to share that because while I had started my healing journey and I heard about people that had given up alcohol and given up many other aspects of socializing, you know, for some people it absolutely is necessary, and I think it really is important to really bring out the word choice, and just that we are of course all individuals, so it will vary depending on situation, circumstance, and just medical history as well. But one of the things that I was afraid of when I had to look at the prospect of healing was the fact that I would have to change everything I'd known and be like this really sanitized version of myself. And what I found was, though in the starting parts of my journey, it was really crucial for me to have a bit of a break from alcohol and dating and some of the stuff like that, I actually found that it allowed me to be able to recognize what felt right for me and what didn't at the time. And that was something that was a huge necessity, because once I was able to understand those emotions, then I was able to look at what triggers me and why. And of course I did many things like journal. Of course I did have a few friends that I could talk to about some stuff within reason. And I did obviously have an amazing therapist as well. But once I started to find a way to sort of take myself back out of the intense moment and to just sort of reflect, introspect, and write down what was going on, I found that was very important, and it allowed me to gain what I needed. So when it came to the social events or the more intense periods of my life, I was able to recognize what was and what wasn't right for me, and the ways in which I can go about it that would help me. And that healing journey was a very meticulous journey, and of course it was a very long journey as well. But I found it was one where, outside of the isolation, outside of like the waiting list if you're relying on free sort of support, I found it was a time where I really got to know who I am as a person. I had to wait nearly 2 years on a waiting list to get support, and by that time I had put in a decent amount of daily practices that could help me at that period of time. However, I also acknowledge that had it have been while my life was in a different circumstance, for example, I was not working at this time, had it have been when I was working, things probably wouldn't have been able to go along so well. I was able to sort of troubleshoot problems as they were happening, and I had that physical space needed to be able to heal and to have some of those conversations. When it came to triggers, when it came to triggers, I found that I would often call up like charity helplines such like Samaritans and places like that, and that would be a help. And even, you know what, I will be honest and say there was still difficulty about that, and I think I will speak on that on a different aspect, but I found that I had things in place that helped me to survive and thrive during that time. And one thing I want to just sort of say and put out there is, if you do find that you're going through something, or you may know someone that is going through something, you know, for me, I definitely would say time was a healer. But I definitely think there's moments where if you're going through it, you need to allow yourself to have those moments with yourself. And that might sound like a very controversial and isolating statement, because for me, I don't have any siblings, and when I wasn't working, that meant that it was very difficult mentally to feel by myself. But from a introspective place, it might help. Of course, you still see people, and you can tailor how extreme or non-extreme you do that depending on what works for you. But I found that having the time to just sort of think, you know, having time to breathe, if you've got the capacity to exercise, then of course, you know, do that. You know, if you don't, then, you know, probably it might be a moment where, again, depending on physical capability, just spend time outside. If you're absolutely not able to get outside, I find that sometimes even having the windows open, you know, playing some music, like I would often find that when I was triggered, I could not deal with upbeat music, because it would just be too much. It would just emulate the thoughts in my mind, just how fast paced it was. However, if I wanted to do something quite cathartic, I would listen to stuff that didn't have lyrics, so lo-fi. If I needed lyrics, then cloud rap and stuff like that. And that was a huge help. Now, I think if you are someone that knows a person that is going through these sort of issues, and you don't know how to help, one thing I do want to say is the best thing you can do is approach these situations with an open mind and without judgment. I have been the person where I haven't felt like I've had friends, and I have also been the person where I have had to distance myself from people, because of the effect it was taking on my own mental health when they were going through things. And there's aspects through those situations in both instances that still sort of affect me in the friendships that I do have now. But one thing I will say, and there is a couple of friends that I had, and like there is definitely one person that's still very much an influential figure in my life, that was able to listen without judgment and just be there. And sometimes that is some of the best things. Of course, it can be hard when you hear someone you know and love talking about such themes such as self-destruction, whether that is through sex or drugs or alcohol or anything, you know. But I think if you have too much of a reaction in a frame of mind of ridicule, it will create that effect where it creates a sense of distance. And while that person who is going through their breakdown or whatever's going on in their life is feeling uncertain, they will almost, it can have like that shutdown effect where they see it as they cannot talk to you. Now, of course, I'm not saying you need to enable them, but I almost think you need to have like a relatively distant approach where you don't tell them what to do. People will work that out for themselves, you know, and you can help them find those channels, but just be there to hold their hand while they figure it out, you know. And also don't feel that you have to save the world. Like, I find that healing from many of my mental health problems, like there was points where I knew that certain stuff I was going through, friends wasn't qualified to deal with it, and I knew that certain stuff I was going through would be huge triggers for some of my friends to really know about what was going on, partly because of their personal connection to me, and also because I was not fully aware of whether they had had personal experience with some of the stuff I was going through. And I think you can only do what you can handle. If you can't handle it, it doesn't mean you have to be rude about it. You know, but I think definitely, you know, be there to listen when you can. Of course, have boundaries, you know, respectfully, by the way. But yeah, just don't judge. Sometimes at my lowest, I just needed someone to be a sounding board. And sometimes over a period of a week or 2 weeks, I could work out what is the right thing for me to do. Be aware of resources that may be of need or support to those people. And you can sort of signpost, but in a non-patronizing way. You know, if you feel like it comes up and you say, you know, I'm not sure what approach you want to take with your healing, but if you do want to go along this route, then you can try this. Be understanding that also many people have so many limitations where they may want to seek help, but they may not be able to seek it in the way that you may want them to do because of certain barriers, whether it's financial barriers, whether it's that they are still in the situation that is the trigger itself, so they can't get that support. There are many situations where their journey is not able to go in a way that they may want, but also you may want as well. So I just wanted to close it off there, and of course send love out to anyone or people that know anyone that's still going through harrowing moments in their life.